Here we have a piece of wood that's floating in water. What do you think is the buoyant force acting on this wood? Now, anytime you're dealing with forces, it's probably a good idea to draw a force diagram. So what forces are acting on this piece of wood? The first force I like to draw with force problems is gravity force, because we know that there's going to be gravity force since it's a mass. And it also has a buoyant force because the water's pushing it up. As you go further down, the pressure increases, so the buoyant force is going to be in the up direction. Since the wood is in static equilibrium, the buoyant force is equal to mg. But since we're not given the mass of the wood, we're going to have to relate the mass to the density of the wood and the volume of the wood, which is given. Now we know that density is equal to the mass divided by the volume. And if we isolate the mass, we get that the mass is equal to the density of the wood times the volume of the wood. Since the wood is in static equilibrium, we know that the forces are balanced. The buoyant force equals the gravity force, which is mg. If we substitute the mass is equal to rho times v for the mass here, we get that the buoyant force is equal to the density of the wood times the volume of the wood times g. Now that we know the buoyant force, we can ask another question. How much of this wood is submerged? More specifically, what is the fraction of the volume of the wood that is submerged? To answer this question, we can use Archimedes' principle, which states that the buoyant force is equal to the weight of the displaced water. So what is the weight of the displaced water? Well, we know that mass is equal to rho times the volume. We're going to use rho of the water, the density of the water, and V is the volume of the water that is displaced, which is also equal to the volume of wood that is submerged. And rho Vg gives us the weight of the displaced water. Setting these two equations equal to each other, basically what we're doing is saying that the buoyant force is equal to the weight of the displaced water. We get the density of the wood times the volume of the wood times g is equal to the density of water times the volume of the wood that's submerged times g. Notice that the g's cancel out, and dividing the volume of the wood on both sides, we get that the volume of the wood that is submerged divided by the volume of the wood is equal to the density of the wood divided by the density of the water. Now let's take a look at a water dam with a wall of width W and a height of H, and we're looking for the pressure at the bottom of the dam. Now notice that at the top of the water, we have a pressure of P naught, or atmospheric pressure. But what we want to find is the pressure at the bottom of the dam. And notice that as you go deeper in the water, you have more and more pressure. So to calculate the pressure at the bottom of the dam, we would take the atmospheric pressure plus rho gh. And rho is the density of the water, g and h is the height of the water above. Now, if we wanted to calculate the gauge pressure would just be the total pressure minus the atmospheric pressure. So we would take P naught plus rho gh minus P naught, and that gives us rho gh. Now let's take a look at the total force on the dam wall. You'll notice as you go deeper in the water, the pressure varies linearly with depth. And so we can say that the average pressure is equal to rho gh divided by 2. This is like calculating a simple average. And since pressure is equal to force divided by area, if I solve for force, I get force is equal to the average pressure times the area. Substituting for the average pressure and the area, we get rho gh divided by 2 times the width times h. And that's equal to 1 over 2 times the density of the water times g times the width times the height squared. Now let's take a look at a metal sphere hanging on a string that we lower into some oil. And this metal sphere has a mass of m and a volume of v, and the oil has a density of rho oil. And we want to find the tension force acting on this metal sphere. Now, whenever you're solving a force problem, you want to start with a force diagram. So what forces are acting on this metal sphere? The force I like to start with when drawing a force diagram is gravity force. So I'm going to draw an arrow going straight down and label that mg. And there's also, since this metal sphere is in oil, there's also going to be a buoyant force. And this buoyant force is a result of the pressure difference at the top of the sphere and at the bottom of the sphere. There's also a tension force because there's a string that's holding onto this metal sphere. Since this metal sphere is in static equilibrium, we can say that the net force is equal to 0. I'm going to define up as positive, and we're going to add up all the force in the positive direction minus all the force in the negative direction. So we have the buoyant force plus the tension force minus mg is equal to 0. We're solving for the tension force, so I'm going to add mg on both sides and subtract the buoyant force on both sides, and that gives me the tension force is equal to mg minus fb. Now we know that the buoyant force is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced, so we can substitute the density of the oil times the volume of the oil displaced times g for the buoyant force. So we get that the tension force is equal to mg minus rho oil times v times g. If we factor out the g, we get that the tension force is equal to g times m minus rho oil times the volume of the oil. Notice that since the metal sphere is fully submerged in the oil, this is also the volume of the metal sphere. Now here's an interesting question. Under what condition is the tension force equal to 0? To answer this question, we can substitute 0 into the tension force. And notice when we do that, the mg is equal to rho oil times v times g. Notice that the g's cancel out, and that gives us m is equal to the density of the oil times the volume. If we then divide v on both sides, we get m over v is equal to the density of the oil. But what is m over v? M is the mass of the sphere, and v is the volume of the sphere. And that means m over v gives us the density of the sphere. So when the density of the sphere is equal to the density of the oil, the tension force is 0. Now let's take a look at a continuity equation problem. We have some water that's flowing through a horizontal pipe, and at point 1, we have a cross-sectional area of A1 and the water speed is V1. At point 2, we have a cross-sectional area of A2, and we want to find the water speed V2, which is the water speed at point 2. The continuity equation states that A1 V1 is equal to A2 times V2. And to solve for V2, we're going to divide A2 on both sides, and we get that V2 is equal to A1 divided by A2 times V1. Now, if A2 is 1/3 of A1, what is V2? So we're going to do a little substitution here. So we have A1, and for A2, we're going to substitute 1/3 A1. And when we do that, you'll notice that the A1s will cancel. That gives us V1 over 1 over 3. Now, what do we do with a denominator that has a fraction? So if you ever see this, you're going to take the top, whatever's on the top, you're going to multiply it by the reciprocal of whatever's on the bottom. And so on the bottom, we have 1 over 3. So this is equivalent to V1 times 3 over 1, which is 3 times V1. Now let's take a look at how diameter might affect the velocity of the fluid. To do that, we're going to start with our area of a circle equation. Area is equal to pi r squared, but we're not given the radius. We're given the diameter. So what's the relationship between radius and diameter? Well, half the diameter is the radius. So we're going to substitute d over 2 for r. And notice that d over 2 is in parentheses, and all of that is squared. So that gives us the area is equal to pi d squared over 4. So if you want to calculate the area of a circle and you're given the diameter and not the radius, this would be the equation. To calculate the velocity of the fluid at point 2, we're going to start with our equation that we derived at the beginning of this problem, which is v2 is equal to a1 over a2 times v1. For a1, we're going to plug in pi d1 squared divided by 4. For a2, we're going to plug in pi d2 squared divided by 4. And notice that everything cancels out except d1 squared divided by d2 squared, and you still have v1 multiplied to that. And then we're going to substitute for D2. We said that the diameter at point 2 is half the diameter at point 1. So we're going to substitute 1 over 2 D1 for D2. So notice that on the bottom we have this 1 over 2 D1 squared. So if we square this, we're going to get 1 over 4 D1 squared. And then notice that the D1 squared, there's a D1 squared on the top and a D1 squared on the bottom. So we're going to cancel that out. That leaves us with 1 over 1 over 4. Now, what do we do here? Anytime you have a fraction at the bottom, you're going to multiply the top by the reciprocal of the fraction on the bottom. So this would be like 1 times 4 over 1, which would be 4. So this gives us 4v1. Now let's take a look at some water that flows through a horizontal pipe that narrows. At the wide section, we have an area of A1. At the narrow section, we have an area of A2, and A2 is half of A1. At location 1, the pressure is P1 and the speed of the fluid of the water is V1. At location 2, the pressure is P2 and the speed of the fluid is V2. Using the given variables, what is V2? So to solve this, we're going to use the continuity equation. A1V1 is equal to A2V2. We're going to first isolate V2, so we're going to divide A2 on both sides, and we get that V2 is equal to A1 over A2 times V1. Now we know that A2 is half of A1, so we can substitute that in there, and you'll notice that the A1s cancel out. So we end up with 1 over 1 half times V1. Whenever you have 1 over a fraction, 1 over 2, we take the top times the reciprocal of the bottom. And so the reciprocal of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1. So we get 2v1. Next, we're going to look at the pressure difference between P1 and P2. So basically, we're going to calculate P2 minus P1 in terms of rho and V1. We're going to do this by using Bernoulli's equation, which states that P1 plus 1 over 2 rho V1 squared plus rho G H1 is equal to P2 plus 1 over 2 rho V2 squared plus rho G H2. You'll notice that this is a horizontal pipe, so H1 is equal to H2. We measure H to be the center line of the pipe. Because H1 is equal to H2, the rho GH1 cancels out the rho GH2. We're solving for P2 minus P1, so I want to get P1 on the same side as P2. So I'm going to subtract P1 on both sides, and then I'm going to subtract 1 over 2 rho V2 squared on both sides, and that gives me P2 minus P1 is equal to 1 over 2 rho V1 squared minus 1 over 2 rho V2 squared. Now I want to solve in terms of rho and V1, so I need to substitute for this V2. Previously, we found that V2 is equal to 2V1, so I will substitute that into V2. That gives me 1 over 2 rho V1 squared minus 1 over 2 rho times 4 V1 squared. Now notice these are like terms, so the next step is to combine their coefficients. So the coefficient of this first term is 1 over 2. The coefficient of the second term is negative 4 over 2 or minus 2. So taking 1 over 2 minus 2, we get negative 3 over 2, and the variables are rho V1 squared. So we get negative 3 over 2 rho V1 squared. Now you may have noticed that there is a negative. What is the significance of that negative? Because this term right here is P2 minus P1, this negative just basically tells us that the pressure at P1 is greater than P2. If you found this video helpful, check out the next video on fluids.